Africans are usually criticized for their slow pace of life, though it seems their approach to life is much healthier than our fast paced, overworked lifestyle in the West. How can we slow down in this busy environment?
Well, what I would say is that I think Africans have a better idea of what life should be. They have, for thousands of years, lived in harmony with the earth cycles, with plants, with animals, and with time. And they've done so very successfully because they are still here. Thousands of civilizations have come and gone, and they're still there. So there must be some credence to how they have approached it. Now, I recently traveled there, and I had people complaining, oh, everything take longer to do, and the people this and the people that. And I said, listen, people are slowly integrating the Western approach. So we cannot go to their country and expect to have a Western style experience. It's simply not going to be so. But I am more tempted to work with what I see has lasted for, I would say, hundreds of thousands of years than to go with something that is merely 70 to 90 years old, which is what Western society represents at this time. What we've been doing was developed during the industrial age and has now come over into the technological age. And based on what I'm observing in Europe, in North America, right here across the Caribbean, it does not seem sustainable. I feel as if societies, especially the younger people, are imploding on themselves because they're so pressurized. I am now seeing instances of people who live their life from a to do list. I see people who are living their life from spreadsheets. And we understand why we've had to use those tools to function in such a crammed sort of expectation that Western society has created. But it's not sustainable. The human psyche, the human body is built to work with and off, on and off. And the circadian rhythm is the greatest indicator of the on and the off. During the daylight hours, you should be on. Nighttime, you should be off. And what is happening is that people, because their devices are beside them, they are constantly on. As soon as they wake up in the morning, they are switched on. They are looking at social media. They're looking at all sorts of things. So we need to rethink time. You know, Africans are on, I want to call it universal time. Recently, we saw Lauryn Hill getting bashed because she has poor work ethic and so on, but I think she's on universal time. She stepped out of the matrix and she says, listen, when I feel to is when I will do it. When I want to is when I will do it. When spirit tells me it's the right time is when I will do it. If we would function off of that, we would be better off. However, it's not easy. And I understand we all have 9 to 5 jobs. There's a reason why it's a 9 to 5. There is a particular parameter of time in which we need to produce. And so we've had to negate our feelings, our moods, and everything and fit ourselves into this 9 to 5. It's useful, but the pandemic showed us that we don't have to work in the 9 to 5. We can work on a staggered time, we can work remotely. And I think people are proving that they can work just as effectively remotely, where they're not under the clock, they're not under anyone's thumb, not under anyone's inspection, and they are simply delivering the deliverables. So, my recommendations as to how we can adapt ourselves a little better to this thing called time, because time is an illusion, you know. Time is a man-made construct. They say there is no time. It's a little difficult for me to tell people there is no time because we have been brought up to work with time. So what I would recommend for persons is that if you do work and you do work a 9 to 5, do what society requires of you in the 9 to 5. But once you step out of the 9 to 5, try as best as possible to operate on natural time. In other words, what you feel to do, when you feel to do it, and so on. Another thing that I'm observing is that people are pushing themselves to do the 9 to 5 and a side hustle and another job and something else and something else. That's not sustainable. The brain has massive capacity. So does the body. But when you tax both the brain and the body for an extended time, it's not sustainable. So I know we want to have a lot of money. I know we want material things, but reconsider that. Think about the things that you can do without. Is a designer bag critical? Is a high-end luxury car critical? What's more important, your health and well-being, or the luxury car and the designer bags? Yeah? Step back a little and just be gentle with yourself. Yeah? Maybe not make that to-do list have 10 things. Maybe make it have 3 things. And remember, there is no punishment for not achieving your to-do list. The only punishment that would be inflicted is yours. Right? We have put just too much pressure on us. We are goal-oriented. And while being goal-oriented is not a bad thing, we need to be able to determine when we've crossed the line between what is useful goal orientation and what is going to be detrimental. So I think people need to just step back a little, not push themselves so much, because to what end? When you die prematurely, if you die of illness, what would have been the gains? You might leave a few material things for your family members. It's probably going to cause a fight between them. As we know in Jamaica, we call that, dead left, and dead left has never had any good outcomes. It always has negative outcomes. So we should live our lives not selfishly, but for ourselves. We should be gentle with ourselves. We should not beat up on ourselves. And we certainly should not be slaves to time from the Western perspective. You should carve out time to lie down and look up into the sky. People will laugh at something like that, but it is absolutely essential that we switch off and just leave ourselves some downtime. Time to sit beside a river and listen to the sound of the water. Even time to sit beside an artificial waterfall is still more soothing than being on your hustle or on your side hustle, right? So let us all try to see how we can move more towards this universal time, this no time scenario where we're not just on this schedule. I've seen it most demonstrated with the new children and the parents that have scheduled every moment of their time with an activity. You're doing it to the children and you're doing it to yourself. So you now have 2 generations of people who are on the hamster wheel. They don't have any time to think. They don't have any time to develop their own personality or their own persona. They don't have any time to even think introspectively, who am I? What am I doing here? What's my purpose? Because we are slaves to a schedule. That's also something that I would like to appeal to parents to move away from scheduling every single moment of your child's life. So you have a schedule that doesn't have 1 minute free, and your child has a schedule that has not 1 minute free. That's not natural, and it's definitely something that we should be looking at how we can move away from. Yes, and I agree that the timetabling puts us on give us some degree of discipline and scheduling, but what is it preparing us for? It is preparing us to go into the same system that we're all complaining about. It's part of timetabling and scheduling in that way is part of the industrial revolution, and how they needed to have us to fill their industries, and that required us to be prepared. But right now we're moving into a new age where people are on their own time, people can produce, people can do different things to earn. So I think the new approach where people produce on their own time is going to become more and more relevant. And so this scheduling and this discipline, because guess what? People who are doing their own jobs, their own business, they have a certain level of discipline that keeps them pushing towards their goal. So, we're going to have to use different things to get us towards the outcomes that we want, and start to move away from those, I call them outdated or outmoded modalities for controlling society.
Please explain why comparing yourself to others is so detrimental in one experiencing peace.
Comparing oneself to another, first of all, makes very little sense. Every single human body on this planet is different. Every plant is different. We have no blueprint that has been replicated. And so to compare yourself to someone is difficult and counterproductive. You and I can have the same upbringing, live in the same kind of setting, have access to the same tools. But your heart rate and my heart rate are different. Your need for sleep and my need for sleep is different. Your metabolism and my metabolism are different. Your taste in food, in music, all of those things are different. So all of those differences that we have are going to impact our outcomes, our abilities to function, our likes and dislikes, and our affinities. So right away, it's a ridiculous thing to do. And what it does when we do engage in comparison is that it leaves you feeling less than or superior to. And those are sort of emotional imbalances, both of them. Feeling less than is an emotional imbalance, and feeling superior to is an emotional imbalance, mental imbalance. And neither of those will serve anyone. The key to peace of mind is to be grateful, to be content with what you have been given in terms of your physical attributes, your emotional and mental attributes, your acumen, your gifts, and all the things that you do have, your strengths. Yeah, even our weakness is to be celebrated, right? So rather than compare yourself, be grateful, express gratitude, thank Be thankful to the divine for giving you this, 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 this. And what they say, that when you're grateful, everything multiplies. And then that multiplication might just be the thing that will make you stand head and shoulders above a certain situation that you may have found yourself wanting in, right? So rather than compare yourself to someone, you set your bar as to what you want to achieve, and then run your own race in your own life. Many a times, and I'm going to give myself as an example, many people had wanted me to do further education. They're like, you're too brilliant to not go on. And I said, no. I said, I don't need certain things to validate who I am. Let me just allow myself to discover my gifts as time goes along, and then work with those gifts to be the best that I can be and to serve humanity as best as I can. And of course, it seemed rudderless and directionless to some people, but I have seen where some of my peers are much further ahead of me financially, in terms of property and real estate, in terms of academic accolades and achievements. But I'm quite satisfied with where I am. This is the life that I chose, and I chose it very consciously. And this is what I'm asking everyone to do. Consciously choose what it is that you want to do, what you want to be, what you want to have, how you want to be, and then work towards it. Ultimately, we all get to the same place. We take different paths and we end up at the same place. We start off at the same place. Naked we come, naked we go. We cannot take accolades with us. We cannot take material items with us, right? So we should place less emphasis on it. Right now, society places greatest emphasis on material wealth and accomplishments. And because of that, we are having distortions in society right now, right? Where our moral compass is sometimes absent, and we are quite happy to look at someone and admire someone on the strength of only their material accomplishments. Even if they're horrible, even if it's ill-gotten gains, we're willing to just look past all of that and just look. And that, I think, is detrimental, especially to the young people. Yeah? So we need to look a little deeper, dig a little deeper within, introspect a little more, and then set our bar based on our personality type, our perspective, how we see the world, our sleep patterns, our productivity patterns, because all of us have different patterns of productivity. I can take an entire day and do one thing, like cooking. For example, and my husband will just come in and he will spend 3 minutes and the meal is done, and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, but I don't compare. It's just a different way of being. Yeah, so we should not compare. Let's preserve our peace of mind and just be grateful for what we have.
What are the best roots, herbs, and things people can do to reduce anxiety and to help with insomnia?
Okay, so issues related to anxiety and depression and insomnia have a lot to do with the central nervous system. The central nervous system is the communication between the brain, the vagus nerve, and all of the organs. So the first thing that anybody who is dealing with anxiety, depression, or insomnia needs to do is they need to start eating properly. because if you eat too much processed food, you're going to mess with your stomach. The vagus nerves end in the stomach. All the nourishment that you give yourself, the brain needs nutrients to be able to function well. So if the brain is starved of nutrients, then it's going to be sending incorrect signals to the rest of the organs in the body. So that's the main thing and the first thing. So anybody who is suffering from depression or anxiety or sleeplessness, they need to cut out sodas, cut out too much of the fruit juices, cut out coffee, yes, and those baked products, all those donuts and pastries and frosting and cake. That's the first thing you need to eliminate. Now, in terms of some of the herbs that you can use, you know, for the different people listening here, I'm going to go with the traditional Chinese medicine herbs first, and then I'm going to, for the Caribbean people, name off some of the Jamaican herbs that I'm familiar with that are nervines. Okay, so nervines and other chemicals or minerals that nourish the central nervous system. All right. So in terms of traditional Chinese medicine, there are some herbs that are very good to nourish the central nervous system and soothe the central nervous system. And these include chamomile. Chamomile, everybody knows about chamomile. You can have chamomile tea. However, I'm going to name a slew of herbs that I recommend that people combine. And you don't have to combine all of them. 3 of them is fine. And you take those dried herbs and you blend them together and you make a gentle tea. It doesn't have to be very strong, that you can drink at nights. And I would say drink it at about 6 so that it gets to go through the stomach and be available to get into the bloodstream. So chamomile, St. John's wort, passion flower, valerian, and hawthorn. Those are my go-to herbs. Some of them you might not know, but just do the research. Let me go again. Chamomile, St. John's wort, passion flower, valerian, and hawthorn. Those are the main ones. Now, in addition, by the way, hawthorn is the roots, because there's hawthorn berries, and that's good for women's issues. But we're talking about hawthorn, the roots. Okay? Passion flower, yes. And apparently passion flower, they cultivate it for this purpose. I'm not sure if it's the passion flower for the fruit, but passion flower, if you go into the herbal stores and ask them for passion flower, you'll get the dried version of it. Now, those herbs are considered nervines. They nourish and soothe the central nervous system. Now, another thing that people can do to assist the central nervous system is to take supplements. But before I go into the supplements, let me hit on the Jamaican herbs. Everybody in Jamaica knows about soursop leaf. Soursop leaf, guava leaf are 2 of the main herbs that people know will soothe and nourish the central nervous system. So if you're in Jamaica or the Caribbean or any of the islands in the tropics, you can easily access guava leaf and soursop leaf. So those 2. So all of the herbs that I named off as traditional Chinese medicine herbs, the equivalent in the tropics are soursop and guava. And for soursop leaf or guava leaf, you can just take 1 of them. It's fine. They're powerful enough. They give you a good night's sleep. They relax you, right? And that's the main thing that people are able to do. Lavender is a scent that also helps to soothe people who are, anxious or not able to sleep. So some people get aromatherapy lavender and they put it into their little aromatherapy device and the beautiful scent is very relaxing for them. Now, in terms of supplementation, there are a couple of things that we can supplement with. We can supplement with lecithin. Lecithin is derived from both plant and animal based. The most common form of lecithin is soy lecithin, and the richest, the most, the place where you can get lecithin in terms of natural is sunflower seeds. So sunflower seeds are rich in lecithin. So are walnuts and Brazil nuts, right? Lecithin works really well with omega-3 fatty acids that you can also find in walnuts and in sunflower seeds. And of course, the fish oils. Yeah. So if you find that you are really anxious or you're having issues with sleeplessness, you can add lecithin and omega-3 to your diet, and that will help to nourish and soothe the central nervous system. Now, another thing that is very good for cognition and nourishing the brain is a mineral called selenium. And selenium is good in assisting people with cognition. And a lot of people who are suffering from insomnia are usually people who do a lot of work. You know, they are teachers, they are professors, they are CEOs and heads of organization. They have a lot of mental burden on their shoulders. And it is imperative that they supplement and nourish their central nervous system with either these teas or these mineral supplements, right? And those are the things that I think will help. Additionally, it is important to integrate exercise if you've not been exercising, because exercise also releases endorphins and other chemicals in the brain that help you to feel better. So exercise is absolutely critical, and getting enough sleep is also critical. There's nobody who is healthy and successful and gets no sleep. I've met a few people that are come close, but eventually, you know what they say in Jamaica, you carry the water to the bucket go a well, the bucket must drop out. In other words, it can happen for a certain amount of time, especially when you're young, but it cannot be sustained up into old age. Yeah, you might have habits that allow you to be able to survive on 3 hours sleep, but believe you me, there is something else that you're losing when you lose that much sleep. Sleep deprivation is something that cannot be reversed or cured. So try to make sure that you're getting enough sleep. Those things also contribute to your anxiety levels, your depression issues, and your insomnia.
Is one know they're spiritually powerful. Should a spiritual powerful person be pacifist or rebel?
I think people suspect that they're spiritually powerful, but it is other people who will be able to see it in them and confirm it for them. Also, a spiritually powerful person has some kind of inkling of their spiritual power as they grow up, as they're growing up. They'll see themselves in certain situations, and they'll see what their thoughts were in the moment, and they'll see the outcome, and they'll go, oh, wait a minute. I said I wanted this, and then this happened. So they know. So spiritually powerful persons start to experience this spiritual power from childhood. Okay? Spiritual power is something that if you have it, you need to take care of this gift, because it is a gift. And to whom much is given, whom much is also expected. So it is so important for spiritually powerful people to know and appreciate that they're spiritually powerful and to use it for good. Because there are many spiritually powerful people that have decided to use it for something else, whether it's for material gain, for securing or increasing their power, for manipulation, for control. So it's just very important for someone who knows that they have spiritual power to be wise and to use it for the reason for which it has been given. If you have been gifted with spiritual power, it means that you have been gifted with it to increase the good on this planet, to assist, to empower, to help, to heal, to grow and expand the spiritual aspects of mankind. So when you use it for other things, it can be a problem. And in fact, the situation that the world now sees itself in is as a direct consequence of persons who had been gifted with spiritual power and have abused it. Right. Now, as to whether one should be a pacifier or a rebel, I think a person with spiritual power would have the level of discernment to know when to use it to be a pacifier or when to use it as a rebel. Because there are going to be times when a pacifier is required in a situation and when a rebel is required. Now, people with spiritual power tend to end up amalgamating having a lot of people around them, and or having control over large numbers of people. And so what do you do when you have control over a large number of people? You either use it to grow them or you exploit them. So a lot of the leaders all around this planet have a lot of spiritual power. And some of them have used it for leadership. But what and where do you lead the people to? So there are times when the leadership that is requires people to be pacified because they are angry, they're out of control. And being angry and out of control is now informing their behaviors, their decision making, and the kinds of actions that they take that will impact society detrimentally. And in that case, someone with great spiritual power has the responsibility to try to rein in and pacify as many of those people as possible so that they don't self-destruct and they don't destroy the fabric of society, the fabric of their family, the fabric of their community. But then there are other situations where people are docile and are allowing people to oppress them. And that is when the person with spiritual power needs to rise up and help to get people mobilized to take an action that will take them out of the oppression. The two that comes to mind are, of course, Marcus Garvey. He had to create a little bit of friction so that people would be mobilized to take an action. Bob Marley also was someone with great spiritual power who used his music and his words to get people to mobilize around their freedom and their liberation. So those are the two that come to mind. So within the American context, we had Martin Luther King. Now, I know people are going to talk about agendas and affiliations, but for the most part, he was all about pacifying the people, and he was all about peaceful protest. So he used his spiritual power to effect change in a society that had been oppressed. But he believed in a pacified approach. Malcolm X, on the other hand, was a little bit more out there, but very, very necessary at the time. There are a couple of others that come to mind as well, but most persons with spiritual power know exactly what it is that is required at the time. Some people take a position that, hey, I'm going to be coming with fire and brimstone, and another people are going, another set will say, I'm coming with peace. Personally, I am both. I will pacify people when the time comes, and I will also try to ignite them. The other day, my position around the war was one of trying to pacify people and say, listen, stay neutral emotionally and spiritually. We all know what's going on, but we don't need to get our emotions invested in it, because that's exactly what the enemy wants us to do, to get excited, to go out and march and put our voice in it. The next thing you know, this president, this country, and now we have a world war. So in a situation like that, it was important to pacify. It can get done without having the anger and the rage. In another area where people are constantly being oppressed and there is no end in sight, many have said that sometimes a little bit of rebelliousness and demonstration of strength and standing against is required. And so both are very necessary, and that's reasonable because that's all about balance. And I think anyone with spiritual power understands how to balance things.
People struggle with moving into a higher consciousness by holding on to their old self. What advice would you give to ones who are letting their old self prevent them from moving into their new higher self?
That's a tricky question because, like everyone else, I'm also struggling with releasing aspects of the old self. And what I have observed, not just in myself, but in other people around me, is that we are still, many times, while we strive for growing our consciousness and evolving ourselves spiritually, emotionally, physically, we are still stuck in childish paradigms. Most specifically, unforgiveness. Unforgiveness is the single most trait that's keeping people from evolving spiritually. People remember something that was done to them, a wrong that was done to them 10, 15, 20, 35 years ago, and they have not forgiven or let go or released that situation. What they don't know is that holding on to it is actually detrimental to themselves, their body. It's a chemical and physiological thing that happens when you hold on to unforgiveness. A lot of people who develop cancers in the colon, it's because they would not let go of things that happened. Unforgiveness, right? It's the barrier to evolving, right? Some of us hold on to unforgiveness of a teacher that wronged us, someone that bullied us in school, but we carry that victim situation all through our life because we have not let it go. We are triggered when we go into situations as adults where we're bullied. And so we're going to react. And sometimes that reaction is unconscious and less than spiritually evolved. The same thing happens where we move from unforgiveness into hatred. A hatred is a whole nother set of emotion that triggers chemical reactions in your body. A hatred now grows into this whole thing of anger and bitterness and resentment. And those emotions carry a chemical charge in the body. They will say that the heart generates a charge when it's generating loving thoughts. Apparently, and this is something I've just learned recently, when there's anger or hatred in the heart, it generates a lot of sodium. And so your body now becomes what they call salty. In Jamaica, we say you're salt. And bad things happen. So that's why when people walk around with a lot of anger and resentment and bitterness in them, they now start to attract negative things in their life. A sequence of negative things start to happen. And then in Jamaica, we would say, yeah, man, them salt. This happened and then that happened and then that happened. If you went and did a thorough examination of that person, you would find that they're carrying a lot of bitterness, anger, resentment, unforgiveness in them. You also will see it in someone's face, in how they age. And we'll see some people and we'll see, oh my goodness, they're just aging beautifully. And they carry so much light. There is so much beauty in their eyes, in their whole persona. It is because those persons have an affinity for forgiving, for releasing, for letting go, for not carrying anger. You can see it in someone's face. You can hear it in their voice. And you can see it in their behavior and in their demeanor. Now, we're all different. So, different things like memory, retention, it's going to be different from person to person. So, there are persons who have a greater affinity physiologically to remembering things and therefore remembering the wrongs that were done to them. And therefore carrying the anger, the bitterness, the resentment within them for years. And then there are those people who don't think about what happened to them 25 years ago. They really don't remember. And they, have dismissed it. They don't think about it. They're just living in the present and moving forward. So there are actually personality types that hold on to things, and their personalities that just let them go and move forward. Women tend to hold on to things longer. It's just how we're designed. Men, they'll remember it. It will be a problem. They'll be angry and then they let it go and move on. So what it requires for us to grow in consciousness and grow spiritually and evolve as a person is for us to recognize these traits in ourselves and manage them. So I was a hothead when I was younger. Everybody, my dad used to call me warlock because I was always at war. But I had to stop and calm myself down, watch how I reacted, manage my reactions, manage my outbursts, manage how I use my words, manage my tone, manage my body language, manage how I put my face, just so that I wouldn't incur the wrath of any more people, because then if you trouble me, I go and trouble you back. It's going to be a war. I'm a Jamaican first. But with time and with age, one recognizes the importance of managing themselves, managing their emotions, managing their thoughts, managing their reactions. And that helps to evolve you. Then after a while, when you realize that you've evolved, then you start to recognize that there are many things that happen that you don't need to dwell upon anymore, and you can let them go. So it takes some level of consciousness and awareness, self-awareness, to be able to move, to manage yourself to the point where you can evolve your spiritual self, evolve your thoughts, evolve your actions to be more moderate and moderated, and to manage yourself so that you don't infuriate others, offend others, and create situations that constantly escalate. We all have that ability to manage ourselves. And it is the persons who manage themselves well that are actually in the best position to evolve themselves. It requires introspection and self-awareness, and it's something that we all, male and female, should strive towards doing.
We live in a world where everything has to be planned out and categorized. How important is being open to what I would call the unexpected path while on your spiritual journey?
One of the things I think people should recognize is that they have a purpose. And that purpose is not scripted in a spreadsheet or in a book written by any man. It is scripted in the spirit. And so we have a duty to listen to spirit and to listen to the nudgings of spirit. Some people will say, how do I know it's spirit? It's the inner voice. The inner voice will give you some indications of what you should be doing and where you should be going. I think it's good to have some kind of idea of a direction that you want to take in life. And usually, the direction that someone will think about will have to do with their strengths, their affinities, their acumen, right? But there are other times when you know that you are here for a reason and you just have to follow the path. I call it the golden path. And the golden path is not really something that is charted or scripted. It actually unfolds or reveals itself as you continue on a forward journey. Okay? It's a very important thing to not just listen to what society says should be your career or where you should be going or what you should be doing. Because we have seen many persons who have achieved everything in the material realm and they are completely deficient spiritually. So when a crisis hits, they are unable to cope. So it is always important to have a strong spiritual, mental, emotional body to be able to guide you forward on that path opening up. Because everybody has a path and it takes them to the end game being when you transition, right? There are many people who are friends and they start off, they go to the same school together, they go to the same high school together, they go to college together, and then life takes them in different directions. But ultimately, they all reconnect again at the end of life, the end of the path. So we have to be mindful that we have a life. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And we should design, to some extent, our life so that at the end we are happy, we're contented, and we are satisfied with the life that we have lived. with respect to my trip the other day, I knew that I wanted to make the trip, but I recognized that it was necessary to leave it open-ended and see how the golden path, or where the golden path would take me. And that's precisely what I did. I planned the trip. I knew where I was arriving, the arriving city, but I didn't know anything else. And I was open and I was confident and I had faith to recognize that wherever it led was where I was meant to go. So sometimes people will look at things and they'll say, man, I should have been there. I shouldn't have been there. I should have been here. But when it is that we can surrender and recognize that every single moment in our life is leading towards another moment, then we can be at peace with where we are in the moment. And I think we need a little bit more of that. A lot of people are wearing away their nerves, wearing away their relationships, wearing away so many things because they have scripted their life and then things are not working out according to their script and they're going to have a meltdown. But if one can simply recognize that there are things, there are forces, benevolent and beautiful forces outside of us that are also a part of navigating us towards or on this path that we're on, then we will surrender and allow life to take us on the path that we belong on. It requires faith. It requires an understanding that most of what we are here to do is to experience a life that is positive, healthy, harmonious, happy, especially if we're able to consciously release some of the traumas, sadness, and other situations that might have happened to us. Once we release them, we can now go on a path, and that path is going to be a path that is filled with joy and harmony and peace and tranquility and beauty and truth, right? But remember, one thing about life, whatever we are holding within us, those are the mirrors that are going to pop up along that pathway. So if before we start this path, we can analyze ourselves, our lives, and look at the things that we weren't so happy about and resolve them, surrender to them, accept that they happened and that they happened to prepare us for this path. A lot of unpleasant things happen to people in the early stages of their lives. But perhaps it happened to prepare them to be the teacher that is there to help other persons go who have gone through or who are going through that same situation, because you have healed yourself and you're functioning. So you can help other people to go through that same situation. Think of it that way. Don't think of it as this thing that happened and it should not happen and now destroyed and whatever. No. Heal from it and move on. You are being prepared for something greater than you even think. So that's what we need to do. Look at the things that have happened to us, detrimental things that have happened to us, and recognize that we had that experience so we could heal from it and be a blessing to someone else as we go forward. So my advice is for people to have a good idea of where they want to go, what they want to achieve, but to also allow the golden path to open in front of them. Because perhaps when you allow that to happen, you will find yourself achieving what you want to achieve faster and more effortlessly. Some people will go on a path, and it's a whole heap of stumbling blocks, and they spend so much time trying to remove those stumbling blocks and boulders and walls and so on. And if they would just veer right a little bit, they would see another path that is wide open and should have been the path that they would take. So, my advice, allow the golden path to open for you and have faith and trust that the path that opens for you is the path that you should be taking. One of the main things that I observed on my trip, I went into East Africa. And as a Jamaican, I just expected all Africans to be like Jamaicans. However, what I realized is that based on the different localities, and the different set of colonizers, the temperament of the people are different. I found the persons in East Africa to be very mild-mannered, soft-spoken, incredibly kind, generous, considerate people. And, my first response when I was there was like, okay, now I understand why these people have been oppressed for so long. It's not that they're stupid, it's that they are just naturally mild-mannered. So when, for example, an oppressor comes in and violently imposes certain rules and behaviors on them, they are just going to accept it without a fight. I suspect there are other parts of Africa, for example, West Africa, where Jamaicans are from, where the people are a little bit more in the frame of standing up to whatever and resisting whatever has come their way. But I found in Eastern Africa, where I traveled, that the people were very, very docile, very loving, very kind. Now, we here in Jamaica, we know we're the fire people, we're the warriors. And what we are looking on Africa and saying, so why the people them not do this and why them not? But it's not their nature. And so this is why I think it's very important for diaspora to be a part of what takes place in Africa. Not because Africans don't know what they're doing. They know. The most brilliant people on the planet live in that part of the world. But sometimes it requires, just through fate, for people to go away and have an experience and come back with fresh experiences that they can overlay on the current situation and bring a situation, for example, of liberation to the different countries in Africa. Africans are doing a great job right now in liberating themselves. I'm quite pleased to see all the different countries on their road to liberating themselves. But it's going to require inputs from other people from the African diaspora coming in and lending their voices and their experience and their exposure to the different peoples of Africa. The truth is, the average African is really just doing their day-to-day. They are getting their food planted, they're harvesting their food, they're sewing their clothes, they're feeding their children, they are interacting with each other. They really don't have the time to be sitting down on social media like some of us in the West and looking at the political play to see who is plotting, who has a hidden agenda, and so on. So the truth of the matter is, the average African is not looking at world geopolitics and how everybody else in the world is trying to see how they can get a piece of Africa right now. So I think it's key for people that are paying attention to what's happening, to be able to go in and work with the mobilizers, and show them what is happening, because knowledge is power. When you know what is happening, then your decisions are going to be different. So some of the leaders in Africa are just taking bribes, taking money under the table, accepting gifts from some of these neocolonials, not knowing that they have unknowingly put their whole entire country into a bind for yet another 20 years. So it is important for the rebellious ones, the outspoken ones that are outside of Africa, to play a role in helping Africa to move through the oppression and to move towards liberation. And I believe that is happening right now as we speak. Even with the wars that are starting everywhere, if the African nations can just remain focused on fixing their affairs instead of jumping in to other people's affairs. In other words, in Jamaica, we say, you have to dance a yard before you can dance abroad. Fix what's going on in your location first. And when you are strong, then you can go and assist others. But I see countries that have horrible issues taking place in their own country, going out on a limb now, trying to take sides and jump into a battle that many people will say, yes, unless this gets fixed, then all of us suffer. But no, you can fix your affairs first. Make sure your people are okay first, and then you get involved in other people's affairs. So we, as melanated people, we need to play a role in Africa's liberation, and we play it because of our knowledge, our perspective, our ability to see the whole global play. And we need to ensure that our African brothers and sisters know what the play is, so that they make the right decisions to protect their people from neocolonialism.